attempt to use, you know, artificial intelligence and immediately make it an entertaining magazine cover. Very well appreciated.
That's very sweet of you. Thank you so much. We'll start decoding some of the budget fine print. And I want to start by asking you about your thrust on capital expenditure, which is very welcome because of the fact that you're trying to build the foundations of a new India. But from Mr. Chidambaram to Sonia Gandhi ji, several voices in the opposition have come out and said that this is at the cost of the Aam Aadmi, that a lot of the social welfare schemes are either flat or tending downwards. John Drez, in fact, has a piece which he's put out saying, adjusted for inflation, most social welfare schemes are actually now at allocations lower than 2013, 2014. So how do you respond to the likes of Sonia Gandhi, Mr. Chidambaram, John Drez? Let's start from there and then we'll dive in.
Well, if it's what you've said, if that's what they've said, not right at all. Because the spending for capital expenditure, we can all talk about to whom it goes, how it goes, who benefits from it, state a lot of fundamental facts. But at the cost of social welfare, I'm not sure if they've done their work. It's all right. They could have given an initial comment. I invite them to go look into the details of the budget. If they're alluring to Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, it always starts at a time of the budget with a certain number. And because it's a demand-driven program, it keeps adding as and when there's more demand. And during the supplementary demand for grants, the amount increases. And that's been the pattern you'll know before the pandemic and also even more so after the pandemic. So actually, therefore, where is it dropping? Where is it even plateauing? So if you look at the past records, past 2 years, and now, I'm not even going prior to the COVID pandemic, there's never been a drop. If anything, we clearly, steadily build on it as and when the demand comes, one. Second, if you're just focusing your attention on Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, sorry, you're missing out on many more things. If money is being spent in PM Awas Yojana, who are the ones who are building the house for you? The very same people who go on the job card for the Manrega. And there, in PM Awas Yojana, it is a 66% hike. Will that not benefit them? 79,000 crores is being spent there. Will that not benefit the same set of people who, if there's no other job, come and demand under Manrega? So one, that keeps going up steadily as and when demand comes. The other, even at the BE, we've given a higher allocation through PM Awas Yojana. And also, the big number for water programs, Jal Jeevan Mission, that's a grant going from the center. Even Jal Jeevan Mission's work happens in the rural areas. Building water tanks, taking water connections to the villages and from the villages to the households. These are the very same work which a Manrega worker would do. Now, is that not being utilized for the very same people who need that? Have they had a look at all this? So is there a comprehensive picture that you've seen and then you're telling me I've reduced? No, sorry. So I think quick response I can accept, which is just, I've heard the budget, so I want to comment. But please spend some time, look at it, and then come back to me if I've reduced it.
Udayan?
Mrs. Sitharaman, other than the members of the Congress party who criticize this aspect, I think generally this 10 lakh crore capex figure has been applauded by everybody. But the question which I have is, given the sectors that you've targeted these to, roads, railways, defense, do you think each of them have the capacity to absorb numbers of this magnitude? And whatever your outlay is, will they actually be converted into contracts and projects on the ground? How confident are you about that?
Well, in the past 2 years, steadily the appetite for capital expenditure has gone up in various departments, inclusive of the three that you've named, and in the three, I request you to look at what has happened in the last year. In the last year, if you'd recall, in the Lok Sabha, talking about the supplementary demand for grants, I openly said there that I'm even giving 10,000 crores more even for this year, because railways are clearly moving ahead speedily in changing a lot of things which have been waiting for decades. So railways, Udan, for instance, reviving all those Second World War time runways which were built in tier 2, tier 3 cities. Civil aviation is growing in India. They need more airports, more facilities, more also for their cargo. Civil aviation has a big capacity to absorb. Roadways has already shown it. NHAA has already shown it. So, and of course defense. So, even within the central government's departments, there are clear departments with that kind of an appetite, not only to absorb, but to implement in a time-bound manner and show it. And so are the states. What was 15,000 2 years ago, crores, became 1 lakh crore last year, and now that has gone up to 1,30,000 crores, because states are showing clear appetite also for capital expenditure. There is, even if I'd given more, I'm sure the states will absorb.
Which brings me to a larger question, Mrs. Sitharaman. When your government came to power, there was quite a bit of talk about how there will be minimum government. But over the years, for whatever reason, the government seems to be still taking center stage with capex, and it's not ceded its economic space to the private sector through divestment of its own companies as was expected earlier. Have you had a rethink at the government, even at a philosophical level, of what role the government needs to be playing with the economy?
Uday, I'm a bit disappointed that you're asking this question.
It's not a suggestion, I'm asking whether that's happened.
I'm disappointed that you're asking this, because does this investment happen indifferent to what is around you, what is to the market? I may be ready to sell off, let's say, two, which as per my public sector enterprises policy are not core sectors, and therefore I can dispose them off. Even if I'm ready to do it, and it is public money, I'll have to see how it is going to be in the market. And therefore, those realities also determine when I actually make it happen. So given that I'm on course, I will get myself ready, but the moment I feel, or the department feels, and those who are sitting and assessing the markets feel it's appropriate time, then we'll release it.
Siddharth?
Madam Finance Minister, I just want to follow up on the CAPEX question. The Finance Secretaries were here just before this session, and they spoke about when you add the PSU as well as state expenditure on CAPEX, it's almost 18.5 lakh crore, and the dollar figure, if we can work out, would clearly be the single highest. The question again is, Bharat lives in its villages, and most of the execution of projects beyond the central projects is in the capacity of states. And if you take out the top 5 states, Maharashtra, where there were so many delays, bullet train, just an example, being sorted. The rest of India, there are some questions about the state government's capacity and ability to execute. Do you think just money will solve it, or more needs to be done, ma'am?
No, capacity and ability together with political will is important. I fully concede that point. But it's not just for the center, it's also for the industries, it's also the people, it's also for the media to engage with state governments to say what is the collective benefit that all of us are going to get by moving ahead. It is not just Modi's program, it is not just a CM's program, it's a program for the people. We need to catch up with so many things which probably for whatever reason, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, have languished. We need to ramp up capacities. It's going to benefit everybody. So there's no point if there is this hesitation saying, will it become known as Modi's program, so should we? No, it's eventually going to benefit the people. So it's not just for the center to keep engaging with states, which we'll anyway keep doing. But it's also got to be the collective conscience of this country to say enough, Let's get going with something. Politics, yes, do it. But this is going to help the economy. And in that you'll benefit, I benefit, everybody benefits.
Anjana?
Yeah. So, is this a populist budget, finance minister? And I ask this because आज तक के लिए मैं हिंदी में पूछती हूँ, क्या ये एक चुनावी बजट है? आपने गरीबों को मुफ्त अनाज योजना 1 साल बढ़ाकर गरीबों को टारगेट कर लिया. आपने लोअर इनकम जो सैलरी क्लास है उसको टैक्स रिजीम में जो आपने 8 साल में बड़ा चेंज नहीं किया था, इस बार आपने 5 लाख से 7 लाख कर दिया. और तीसरा, आपने पीएम आवास योजना का आवंटन तो 66% बढ़ा दिया, आपने माइनॉरिटी अफेयर्स का आवंटन 38% घटा दिया. तो क्या आपने तीनों ही ग्रुप्स को टारगेट करके चुनावी बजट ये 24 को, क्योंकि जब आवास आप देंगे तो जाहिर तौर पर आपको बहुत बड़ा इलेक्टोरल फायदा हो सकता है उससे. इज इट अ पॉपुलिस्ट बजट एम्ड एट प्लीजिंग दीज क्लासेस?
I'm amazed at the capacity of the media to wield the knife this way when they want and that way when they don't want. You build the houses for the people who don't have a roof over their head. I did it last year, I did it the year before that. तब वो चुनावी बजट नहीं था, मगर इस साल वो चुनावी बजट. ये कैसे हो सकता है जी? करो तो गलत, ना करो तो भी गलत. हाँ, और I would have thought, hey, how come you didn't make a चुनावी बजट? That should have been the प्रश्न. ये चुनावी बजट है क्या? आप बोलो भाई, घर नहीं बनाया इससे पहले, पानी नहीं दिया इससे पहले, सैचुरेशन तक पहुंचने के लिए इस साल भी मैं करूंगी. उसके वजह से ये चुनावी बजट हो जाएगा क्या? और जनता आज ये भी देख रही है कि पैसा बंटवारा करना है कि सचमुच उनको जो चाहिए वो पहुंच रहे हैं कि नहीं पहुंच रहे. अगर ये चुनावी बजट होता, पिछले 4 साल का बजट, हर बजट चुनावी बजट ही है, इस साल का भी है.
66% बढ़ा है, 66% increase in PM आवास योजना and 38% decrease in minority affairs.
Wait a minute. The minority affairs ministry's budget being reduced or because it has been routed through a different route, and that as per the ministry's demand. If you want to twist it this way, you can. But the fact remains that the coverage in terms of fellowships and scholarship reaching minority students, I distinctly remember Mukhtar Abbas Naqvi ji talking about it, has been highest between 2014 and 19. अगर उसको चुनावी मुद्दा समझेंगे, just as in scheduled caste dominated constituencies, scheduled tribe dominated constituencies, BJP got high votes. Would you also say in minority dominated constituencies, we would have also won in huge numbers? So somewhere, the programs that we do are aimed at Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. From where the vote comes is for you to go on analyzing. We do it for everybody.
Madam Finance Minister, I'm curious about your thinking on the defense budget. The defense budget this year was at 5.93 lakh crores. That's about 1.5% more than last year in terms of revised estimates. Now, this is about 1.97% of a percentage of total expenditure. Given that we've got a 33-month standoff with China at the border, and given that we are spending much lesser than comparable countries, especially China, on defense as a percentage of total expenditure, are we doing enough to modernize our forces? Opposition can say at the time of Rajiv Gandhi and for many years after that, the ratio of defense spending to total spending was much higher than it is on your watch. And this is a nationalist government which puts India's defense first.
I would have readily answered this question on the face of it. But the moment you compared me with Rajiv Gandhi's budget for defense, what comes to my mind is Bofors. We've not done that. I concede we've not done that.
No, but the fact that the budget is
Nationalist
increased...
government is also to take care of defense without any corruption, defense without any pilferage, defense also for its personnel, OROP, which never happened before. And also, I want you to see defense also from the point of view of border area connectivity. The number of roads, Rahul, put a face which shows familiarity with that.
No, sure, of course.
Don't
that's
be
true.
confused.
No, that's true. You built border roads.
Border roads, accessibility to the border areas, villages in the border areas, bridges in the border areas, accessibility for tanks and everything else to reach. Phenomenal work. That's defense budget also. It goes through the BRO. So the amount is one thing and actually where it goes. And also, look at the silos for defense spending. Defense civil, defense personnel, defense ammunition and armaments, defense production. Please put it all together.
No, but
and
if I
see.
remove the
This
1.3
kind
lakh...
of a bifurcation or trifurcation never happened before. We are taking care of each one of their silos without letting down on any one of them.
No, especially in the context of a live border face-off with China. If I take away the 1.38 lakh crores spent on pension payments for 35 lakh servicemen, the percentage of spending as a part of our GDP, as a percent of our GDP is only 1.5%. Now, what concerns me is, are we doing enough to actively buy new weapon systems which the services need? Or is the government's calculation that this border face-off will not actually convert into a hot war between the two countries and therefore we don't need to do more?
Rahul, again, I'm sure you're one of those who are familiar with the ways in which defense equipment purchases happen. The numbers need not be reflected each year in terms of what equipments are bought. Between 16 and now, just look at Air Force's capabilities. Just look at the way in which Rafale, all the aircrafts landed in India per the time of the contract. Look at the way in which many of the things which are being made for defense is made in India. Those procurements are also for enhancing their abilities. So you see it in some way, you also should see it in some other ways which is happening there. And not always as defense really tell you this was used in Galwan, this was used in Tawang. It doesn't say that to you. Many things are sent to the place where they require it, and some of them can also be through revenue expenditure.
Udayan?
I want to ask you a bit about the issue of unemployment, Mrs. Sitharaman. While what you're doing on the capex front will help that issue, it seems that some of our neighbors like Bangladesh and Vietnam are doing better on the lower end manufacturing front, which is the real unemployment generator. Over the last couple of budgets or even going forward, have you thought about this more closely on what can be done to stoke manufacturing of the lower end of the variety which is creating so many jobs in our neighboring nations?
It's very difficult for me to answer if you conflate it as opposed to Bangladesh and Vietnam.
But they are doing well on that front.
No, I'm not refuting that.
Okay.
But it's not possible for me to compare it in those indicators or the types in which they support job creation. In India, at a stage at which Indian industries are, and at a time when industry expanding its capacities is also looking at how they would go about it, because most of them are looking at bringing in higher levels of technology, Industry 4.0, Web 3 and so on. My conversations with industry have shown me that they are looking for people appropriately skilled for these jobs. They are not jobs which existed before. They are jobs which are definitely, specifically requiring of certain skill sets. So we, in this budget and even in the last one, and in this one in particular for Industry 4.0, have committed ourselves in a big way to train and upskill people to meet the newer requirements of industry. So the jobs are there, appropriate skill sets are not available, for which we are really rushing through in certifying such institutions which can train appropriately for the requirement of industry.
Since you speak about industry, let me ask you this, because it seems like what is coming through from industry, given that you're spending so much money on capex yourself, is that they're busy buying each other out, I mean NCLT, etc. But they're not engaging in greenfield expansions, which will give that huge impetus to the credit cycle. Why is that not happening, Ms. Sitharaman?
Greenfield expansions,
Greenfield projects?
greenfield projects. What are those immense achievements, and not of government, private sector, in renewable energy? What are those immense move to also become component manufacturers for chips? What are those immense move when you're looking at electronics, which you'd so need for many other industries which require them as raw material? What are the PLI successes in the sunrise sectors? They're happening. Like I said elsewhere today, we have got used to, and I include myself in it, at the old core industries. Even they have a challenge before them, much before they can expand their capacities. I take the example of steel. No longer can India's steel industry say, I'm expanding capacity, producing more, unless they're going to produce green steel. Because your existing steel faces immense non-tariff barriers wherever it goes. Wherever it goes, they have a problem because the measure is it green? So Indian industry will not just expand to produce more steel, but it will have to expand to produce more and newer green steel, for which the kind of investments to make, the kind of technology appropriate that you'll need, and then the manpower for it. We are at a stage where there is an immense transitional work happening. So yes, I like you will be impatient to see, hey, get some fellows getting into jobs to do that. But it does take that painful lot of time, because the transition that Indian industry is going through is to produce what they produce now in a lot more scaled fashion, but also in green fashion. There's a lot of change happening, a lot of churn happening. We should take all that into our analysis.
Finance Minister, the question I want to ask you is about the philosophy behind sweetening the new tax regime. Some people would definitely know that you made an attempt in 2020. It's not something that you decided to do in pre-election year. It didn't work. You have now improved upon the scheme. There are some people who are saying that it will end up, and that may not be your intention, disincentivizing savings, because we have been used over decades of using ATC and other exemptions. What is your own view about why was this change needed, and is it true that you want people to spend more and save less as the charge is leveled by some?
No, not really. I couldn't have anticipated that in 2023 I need to have people spend more and therefore bring it in 2020 itself and so on. No. It was brought in, the new tax regime was brought in because we wanted a more simplified, easy to comply, and above all have a reasonably low rate of tax to pay. And that particularly for that set of people who are in the low and middle class income band. And that couldn't have been done in one go. We wanted to come into it steadily. That is why even today we've retained the old exemption rich old tax regime, whilst bringing and making it more attractive, not only just bringing it 2 years ago, the new tax regime, but making it attractive by giving greater easy compliance, and also for those slabs which belong and to which majority of the Indian middle class belong to, with better favorable tax slabs. So it was brought in because of that. We didn't shut down the old tax regime because there are still people using it. And I'm not forcing anybody to come into the new tax regime, but certainly I like to make it more and more attractive so that people find merit in coming into a system which is lots more simpler.
Ma'am, a quick follow-up. Between the 20% and 30% slab, if you are up till 15 lakh, you are at 20. The moment you cross that, you go to 30. Corporate India is at 25%. The question people are asking, why isn't PIT the same as CIT, corporate tax rate of 25%? Why have you retained 30 still?
Interesting. Let me work on it next time.
You will work on this next time?
I'll try to
30
see.
to
I'll
25?
work, but I'm not promising anything.
No, but this is an
I said simpler and more attractive new regime. It can start and end at every stage of it.
So the finance ministry will consider in the months to
No,
come
I'm not saying
a
that.
reduction in personal income tax from 30%
No,
to
I'm not
25%.
saying that.
It will be applauded very loudly.
No,
if
I don't
you
want
were-
applause. I have to work.
No, but okay, are you satisfied with the results that you've got on the reduction in corporate income tax? We've seen publicly and privately, you yourself and others in government nudge India Inc. to do more. In terms of what you would have imagined, of course the pandemic happened, there's a war going on, but in terms of what you would have expected from the sharp and wise reductions in corporate income tax, how satisfied are you with the bang that you've got for your buck?
No, first of all, I'll bring in the dimensions which the corporate tax rate coming down has brought in. It cleaned up the balance sheets of industry. They could de-leverage themselves in the sense they could pay back a lot of their loans to the banks. The twin balance sheet problem was addressed also because of that. The economy had so many different fallout or benefit from the reduction in corporate tax. So I just don't look at it as, all right, money saved from that because of the low corporate tax will certainly come into industry this year itself. No, it will come in. But it cleared a lot of backlog before it came in here. So I see that as a benefit.
Anjana?
Yeah. No wonder we've called you the Wonder Woman, because you've been in the eye of the storm now for the 5th time when you put forward the budget. But my question to you is this: OTR versus NTR, even P. Chidambaram Sahab has tweeted on it, and he says, P. Chidambaram Sahab, वही anti-saving सरकार का ये कदम है, क्योंकि by default आप new tax regime को push कर रहे हैं. अगला सवाल जो मेरा है वो आपसे ये है कि राहुल गांधी कह रहे हैं कि ये अमृत काल का बजट नहीं, ये मित्र काल का बजट है. जब आपने 2 करोड़ से ज़्यादा सैलरी वालों की जो सरचार्ज है उसको घटाकर 25% कर दिया है. अडानी को लेकर जेपीसी की मांग विपक्ष कर रहा है और पार्लियामेंट को स्टॉल कर रहा है. तो बतौर वित्त मंत्री आप दोनों को क्या जवाब देंगे?
They have different answers. I don't want to get carried away by the names or the tongue-in-cheek way in which reforms in India are being treated because it's being done by Modi and not being done by Congress. I don't want to get into that because it's all right. It's entertaining for a few minutes for all of us. I can come up with a fancy name to do, you know, everything which anybody gives me. But as I said earlier, do we think about India? Do we think about Indian economy? Do we want to make Indian economy a lot more attractive a place for us to do business in? Do we want to make it easier for all of us to live our lives paying genuinely what we have to pay our tax like? Or do we want to constantly create a myth of a world which was never under the Congress? Oh, this is Gabbar Singh tax. Oh my God, under each item, I've said it in Rajya Sabha, I'll say it again anywhere you want me to come. I will come wherever you call me. Item by item, I'll tell you, pre-GST, on common man's items, what was the rate of tax and what is it after GST? It's actually far lower on each one of them. No item is higher than what it was pre-GST. But sorry, I don't like this reform being done by Modi, therefore it is Gabbar Singh tax. Now, if you ask me that, he's saying it's Gabbar, would you want to? No, sorry, I don't want to engage. If you do your homework and come back to me to say it is Gabbar because I'm willing to engage. Just throw something like that. Similarly, now, to say it's not Amritkal. India won its freedom in such a way that so many people lost their lives. 75 years we've struggled. This party, that party, all parties did something to improve the lot of the common man. I'm not denying anybody their role. But would we want to move forward also? And therefore, the year before, 25 years before reaching 2047, if we call it Amritkal, you don't like it. I'm sorry, I'm not calling it Amritkal for myself. It's for all of us. You don't want something to be good for India? No, it's negative. I'm afraid of leaderships which only project everything in the negative light. You want the country's people to live with hope and move forward and do best for themselves, or you want to keep telling them tomorrow is going to be worse than today. Of course, under your regime, it was worse than today. So, Anjana, please, I want leaderships, irrespective of the party they belong to tell people there's hope and I will do better and so on, rather than decry everything and with that toxic language. And it is this set of people who speak that toxic language who claim they are having pyar ka dukan. Where's that nonsense? Your language, first of all, is so toxic. You show hate. Even if it's for a person who belongs to the opposition party. I'll not spit poison like this. I'm sorry, I don't like your politics, but I'm sorry, this is not the way to go about. We are doing it like this. Would be enough for people of India to understand. If you're continuously spitting poison, I'm sorry, my little bit of advice, people will get fed up of poison, yeah? You know, I want to just give a film example.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm making a longish answer. Why do Indians love movies where, you know, lovely music, people running around trees and singing songs and such beautiful imagery and all that? And I remember ages ago, this particular film had come. I can't even recollect its name. And it was suffused with the culture of a particular area and its culture. But every Indian enjoyed it. Even that India which is in South, which says, I am sorry, we can't understand Hindi, enjoyed that film. Why? It showed positiveness, enjoyment, family together, everybody liked one another, and you know, and there was difficulty, somebody dies, and then still somebody makes up. It was all suffused. What is that film, yeah, where
Anjana, between
Renuka,
Siddharth, Udayan and me,
Renuka.
if there's a question on film, you have to play the dumb charades, okay? I don't think Udayan has any clues. Siddharth, I'm
Hum
not
Aapke
sure.
Hai
Hum
Kaun?
Aapke Hai Kaun?
Well done.
No, that
Round of applause. There you go.
family which goes about singing in one marriage, then moves to another house, one lady dies, another lady comes in, and then there's so much of, you know, oh goody, everything nice. Why do you think Indians like that film? Even if they didn't understand the culture of a particular area of in India which is highlighted in that film, and that kind of Hindi. Because it packed so much of goodness, it packed so much of hope, and brought in such images of, it's nice, you come out feeling good, but you'll be going back in that drudgery, in that DTC bus and all that, but still you liked it. That's the point I want to underline. I'm not asking him to give me another hum aapke hai kaun, but at least batao bhai acha shabdon mein Bharat ka, give me good images, give me promise of good things and execute them. Hare garibi, 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 20-point program, only we can remove garibi, garibi, garibi. Even today, remove karke dikhao bhai. That's the problem there.
This question, Hum Aapke Hai Kaun, is something which it seemed Gautam Adani was trying to ask the government when he stood in front of the flag and said it's an attack on India. But you did not answer that question, Mrs. Sitharaman.
Jairam Ramesh is saying, Adani aapke hain kaun? That's the opposition's
said
charge. He
that?
actually
Yes, he
said, Hum
has.
aapke hain kaun? I mean, it's ironical of all the films that you could have mentioned.
That
You
you chose
mentioned the
this
one
one.
film which is currently being used by the Congress to attack your government.
That's
Thoda
the
unhone spin
point.
kar diya.
That's exactly the point. I am referring to that film because of the angularities which I am saying common people liked it because of this. But if that's the DNA there, you know, even a good hum aapke hai kaun can be twisted to.
Was it a conscious decision though to not speak in this matter of Adani versus the stock market? Did you say it's between two private parties, the government should not get involved?
Did I say that?
No, I'm asking you. Is
Oh,
it?
no. My response for the questions which have been asked of me on that issue is that the regulators in India are doing their job and they should be on their toes to do the job. Any disputes on that? And no hum aapke hai kaun here. I'm seriously saying regulators will have to do their job.
Madam Finance Minister, on the Adani Hindenburg saga, I have two queries. One, your response to the charge of this being a case of crony capitalism, and secondly, on the exposure of public financial institutions. The Life Insurance Corporation of India, which is entrusted with the savings of our citizens, said that they've got 1% of their total assets under management with the Adani Group. And this is an investment which domestic mutual funds, even on the equity side, with far more aggressive investment mandates would not make. And therefore, does it appear to you to be odd that the LIC, which is supposed to have a more conservative investment mandate, would make an investment which even equity mutual funds domestically shied away from making? Secondly, State Bank of India said that they've got 0.9% of exposure to the Adani Group. That's about 27,000 crore rupees. Most of the private sector banks chose to stay away from investing in Adani stocks or giving them loans for various projects, and yet SBI did. How do you respond to the questions being asked by the opposition?
Both LIC and SBI have given their statements publicly and in great detail. The heads themselves came out and spoke about it. So there's nothing that I can materially add to that. On the one hand, I'm sure Udayan would ask me, why are you all interfering with, aside from this problem, interfering with LIC or banks and their functioning? Shouldn't they be running professionally? Yes, we are allowing them to run professionally. So I don't think it is right for me even to think that I should have gone in every 2 weeks to say, no, you will choose this company, you will not choose that company. No, they are taking their conscious, board-driven professional call. And if they come out to speak about it, I'll take that word and quote it back to you.
Ma'am, it's just that there's a saying in English that fools rush in where angels fear to tread.
Oh God, you're talking about our banks who are professional as
Not a single
fools.
not a single private sector bank thinks it's prudent
And
to
by
lend to the group.
implication, you're saying that, like Rahul tried putting words into my mouth, I want to. By implication, therefore, you're saying private banks are not fools and public sector banks are fools. I'm sorry.
The past experience of public sector banks versus private sector banks, ma'am.
Decision making anywhere will have to be assessed for what they are. It's not as if the private is more, public is not. Or public is doing things and private is not. I've been asked questions about public sector going ahead with emergency credit liquidity guarantee scheme and the private sector was not doing it. Was that good or was that bad? Every decision is taken by the respective boards, and I don't think I would, sitting here before the media with you,
Right.
immediately off the cuff say this is good and that is bad. No, I can't do that.
See that?
Finance Minister, at last year's budget, I was on Anjana's show and we discussed, a point came up, हमारे बैंकों का हाल क्या है? I'm asking you this question, Finance Minister, because over the last few months it has become quite clear that the PSU banking pack, which was sometimes called the sick man of our financial system, is now very robust. We have seen that reflect in stock prices also and also credit. The question to you, ma'am, हमारे बैंकों का, सरकारी बैंकों का खासकर क्या हाल है आज?
आजकल मंत्री, वित्त मंत्री जी बोलते नहीं है, उसके ऊपर पेपर में आ जाता है 3 दिन पहले ही. स्टेट बैंक का प्रॉफिट Q4, Q3, they have announced it already. Public sector bank every year in the last 2 years is showing how NPAs are coming down and their profitability is going up. So I don't need to list it all out, but it is there out there for you all to see. And I'm sure, Siddharth, you've noticed the health of the public sector banks in the last few years have considerably changed, that they don't even ask me for fund for recapitalizing them. Would you have heard of this? Consistently last 3 years, no money has been given for bank for recapitalization. Doesn't that itself indicate what is the health of Indian banks?
Do you think of this as your biggest achievement? What do you think of as your biggest achievement?
No, I don't.
In your time and
I don't spend my time on that.
So that's for the pundits to do. Anjana?
वित्त मंत्री जी, मेरे दो सवाल हैं आपसे। आरबीआई की तरफ से तो जानकारी मांगी गई बैंकों को लेकर के किसने कितना निवेश किया, लेकिन क्या सेबी वाकई इन्वेस्टिगेट कर रही है अडानी ग्रुप की जो हिंडनबर्ग रिपोर्ट
RBI
के
has asked बैंकों का जानकारी, ये आपको मालूम है?
ये हमें तो सूत्रों के हवाले से हमने खबर चलाई है और ये
सूत्रों
अखबारों में
के हवाले से, आई डोंट वांट टू।
दोनों जानकारी वित्त मंत्री जी आप बता दें, क्या सेबी इन्वेस्टिगेट कर रही है? पहला प्रश्न है।
Haven't they given a statement already? कल या परसों उनके तरफ से elaborately एक statement आया है।
दूसरा हिस्सा इसी प्रश्न का है कि हिंडनबर्ग की एक रिपोर्ट आती है, यूएस जस्टिस डिपार्टमेंट हिंडनबर्ग को वहां पे इन्वेस्टिगेट कर रहा है, लेकिन ब्लड बात होता है यहाँ पे। 10 दिन में जो नंबर 2 पर थे अडानी साहब, वो टॉप 20 के बाहर हो जाते हैं। तो डेविल्स एडवोकेट प्ले करते हुए हमारे रेगुलेटर्स क्या कर रहे हैं? जब इतना गुना इजाफा उनके शेयर्स में हो रहा था, क्या कंपनी मैनेजमेंट से अकाउंटेबिलिटी उसकी पूछी गई? क्या बेहतर और पारदर्शी एक तरीका बन सकता है जिसकी वजह से ऐसा हमारा शेयर बाजार में हम परेशानी का सामना ना करें? क्या हमारे रेगुलर्स ज़्यादा प्रोएक्टिव हो सकते थे?
रेगुलेटर्स प्रोएक्टिव होना है कि नहीं होना है, वो भी एक प्रश्न मेरे मन में है, क्योंकि कॉन्फिडेंस मार्केट में बरकरार रहना है तो प्रोएक्टिव रहने में बरकरार रहेंगे या नहीं, वो भी एक प्रश्न है। अगर मान लीजिए, एक इस विषय में नहीं बोल रही हूँ, मान लीजिए एक रेगुलेटर बार बार बोलते हैं, हो माय गॉड देयर इज अ रिस्क इन दिस कंपनी, दैट कंपनी इज बीइंग इन्वेस्टिगेटेड, दिस कंपनी इज बीइंग, ओपनली बोलते रह रहा है, वो मार्केट के लिए अच्छा है कि नहीं है? मैं प्रश्न पूछ रही हूँ, मेरा कुछ राय नहीं है इसमें। और दूसरा, अगर वो इन्वेस्टिगेट ही कर रहे हैं, खुलेआम कंक्लूजन के पहले ही बोलना अच्छा है, बाद में बोलना अच्छा है, ये सब भी उनके मन में रहता है, वो उनके अप्रोप्रिएट डिसीजन भी लेते हैं। इधर हम बैठ करके आज, क्योंकि एक विषय के ऊपर हम सब इतना इन्वॉल्व है और हमें जानकारी चाहिए, इसीलिए हमको वो थर्स्ट लग रही है कि क्यों नहीं आ रहा जल्दी। हम विषय इधर उठा सकते हैं, जवाब भी दे सकते हैं, मगर इट्स अप टू देम टू सी व्हेन इज द बेस्ट टाइम, क्योंकि वो भी मार्केट से संबंधित है कि आज बोलूं कि कल बोलूं, बोलने में क्या आउटपुट आएगा।
On the reverse side, ma'am, the likes of BJP leader Mahesh Jethmalani have seen a Chinese hand in this, because the Adani Group was a part of India's global economic diplomacy. They sense a larger conspiracy to try and trip the India story. Do you see purchase in that argument?
I won't engage in that argument.
You know, that's called an outswinging ball, which the finance minister just said, "Chhod do isko niche hona." Yeah, Udayan, go on.
No. Mrs. Sitharaman, there are some banks in the country which we call too big to fail. Adani is a very important player in the infrastructure space. Is it big enough to call too big to fail? Because, you know, there is a suggestion that because of the setbacks, it might set back our progress on many key infrastructure projects. Do you see that as a risk at all?
Well, any institution on the verge of failure or any institution in a high risk environment for an economy like India can cause its own impact. So I will not say this is more, that's less. I'll give you the lived experience of 2019, where literally I used to wonder tomorrow morning which is that NBFC which is going to be in difficulty, who's going to fall off the cliff. I used to have that fear. And at that time, if I had disclosed it, what good would it do? And even as we were going through this and making sure every precautionary steps were being taken, you had one S bank on which the Reserve Bank immediately came in, luckily came up with a solution to address it and so on. So every time if questions are posed saying, you think this is going to be dangerous, that's going, no, I will not know. My job will be to make sure the economy runs smoothly. Where I have to intervene, I'll have to intervene. And that's about it. I don't need to talk anything at all.
See that?
Nirmala ji, this was your fifth outing and a very crisp speech at that. I wonder if you would like to tell our audience what your own views are about how much can India's GDP grow. The reason I ask you, several decades ago we were, it was derogatorily said Hindu rate of growth. and then we saw pretty decent growth. But in the medium to long term, what does the finance minister have to say about her own growth expectations? The economic survey gives us a number, but I would really be grateful if you could tell us what is the number that you would aspire for.
Very difficult to say, because I think at every stage, every finance minister must have faced challenges. But now, with at least two major problems yet not completely coming to a closure, the pandemic, in some parts of the world it's still alive, and the war, which doesn't seem to show any sign of coming to a conclusion, coming to an end. It's very difficult for me to take a risk and say, at this number I'll be comfortable, because I don't know what risks. Again, I'll have to repeatedly last 3 budgets. How much ever effort we put and come up with a budget, you saw the way in which within a month something else would come and challenge us. Whether it was the Delta wave, whether it was Omicron, whether it was the Russia war. So there are very uncertain times. Difficult to project a number.
So we're coming to the tail end of this conversation. I want to get a quick round of last questions from editors. I'll start with you, Anjali.
Okay. My question is, P. Chidambaram was actually counting the number of times you had said certain words. और उनका कहना था कि महंगाई, बेरोजगारी जैसे मुद्दों पर आपने कुछ नहीं कहा है. और उन्होंने ये भी कहा, तेजस्वी यादव कह रहे हैं कि किसानों की आय दोगुनी हो जाएगी 2022 तक. इस पर सरकार फेल हो गई है. किसान सम्मान निधि जो आप 6,000 सालाना देते हैं, उसमें भी आपने रकम नहीं बढ़ाई. ये माने ना माने, लेकिन 2024 में चुनाव है. महंगाई, बेरोजगारी और किसानों की समस्या सबसे बड़े मुद्दे होंगे जिस पर विपक्ष आपको घेरेगा. इन तीनों पर आपका जवाब, और क्या आपने वाकई ईमानदारी से इन 3 इश्यूज को एड्रेस किया है अपने इस बजट में?
हाँ, बिल्कुल एड्रेस किया है. महंगाई को बजट के द्वारा भी और बजट के हटकर बाहर भी कंटिन्यूअसली हमने महंगाई को नियंत्रण में रखने के लिए हर कोशिश कर रहे हैं. इसीलिए पिछले बार जब लोग एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे थे कि इट विल कम डाउन फ्रॉम 8 टू समथिंग लाइक 7, वो 5.8 में पहुंचने में एकदम चौंक गए सब लोग. अरे इतना भी गिरावट आई है क्या? सो वी आर वर्किंग ऑन इन्फ्लेशन कंट्रोल बोथ थ्रू द बजट एंड आउटसाइड. 1. सेकेंड, बेरोजगारी के विषय में मैं विस्तार से ऑलरेडी बोल चुकी हूं. सरकार के द्वारा भी हर महीना यू सॉ दैट जॉब्स आर बीइंग, लेटर्स ऑफ अपॉइंटमेंट आर बीइंग गिवन. उसके अलावा स्किलिंग, अपस्किलिंग का लगातार प्रोग्राम्स करते आ रहे हैं. और इसमें इस बार ग्लोबली हमारे युवकों को अपॉर्चुनिटी बढ़ रही है, इसलिए उनको फॉरेन लैंग्वेज का ट्रेनिंग भी साथ जोड़ रहे हैं जब उनके यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में पढ़ने के आखिरी साल में उनके लिए वो जॉब ट्रेनिंग भी. और उसके अलावा बहुत प्रोग्राम्स है जिसका अभी मैं एलैबोरेट नहीं कर रही हूँ. और लास्ट में आपने किसान के विषय बोले. किसान के लिए 2020 में भी उनको इतनी सारी दिक्कत आने के बावजूद भी अच्छा सा फसल उत्पादन हुआ. फिर भी हम उनको इंटरेस्ट को कम करने के लिए किसान का वो क्रॉप लोन के विषय में, टू कीप इट वेल अंडर कंट्रोल, तब इंटरेस्ट रेट वाज स्टिल गोइंग अप. We brought in the interest subvention so that their rate doesn't go up. और किसान के लिए अच्छा सीड्स का प्रावधान, कृषि विकास केंद्र के द्वारा एक्टिविटी, और ये मिलेट श्री अन्न का एक्सपेंशन करना, ये सब किसान का फायदामंद है. एंड ऑल्सो अन्नदाता, ऊर्जा दाता भी हो सकते हैं. उनका सोलर पैनल लगवाना, उससे उनके बिजली का खर्च कम करवाना, ये सब भी इसमें शामिल है. हाँ, 6,000 को बढ़ाया नहीं है बोल सकते हैं. उनके लिए कुछ ना कुछ मुद्दा ढूंढने में ये सब हाथ में आएगा. मगर हम तो जो वायदा दिया दोगुनी करने के लिए फुलफिल बिल्कुल करेंगे.
Last question from Udyan.
You know, Mrs. Sitharaman, nobody disputes that India is the fastest growing among the large economies of the world. The only wrinkle for even people who are great supporters of the Indian economy is the balance sheet. They said, you know, so many years have passed, but we are stuck at that 80% of GDP on our debt. And it's debt which is bringing down the house of Adani. So perhaps if you could tell us if you have any targets on which you can pare down our national debt before it becomes a problem?
It's a good ideal, meaning a question which addresses an ideal situation, no? Bringing down debt, ideal situation. But let's understand why we reached here. And that too reached here in spite of the very same people who are talking to us now, oh, debt, debt. When these the very same people who asked me to print notes and distribute it come what may, that's their language. Print. हर हाथ में पैसा रखो, आपके पास पैसा नहीं है तो प्रिंट करो. नमस्कार कर रही हूं उनके ज्ञान के लिए. अगर वो मैं करती, where will I be in fiscal deficit now? Where will I be in terms of getting that money back and then keeping the economy steady? So advice के समय एक, दूसरे समय नियंत्रण के साथ हम जा रहे हैं, तब दूसरा. Please, my strong suggestion to the thinking media personnel, हर एक इशू में प्लीज जितना मुझे प्रश्न कर रही हो और सरकार में मंत्रीगण को प्रश्न कर रही हो और हम जवाब जरूर देंगे, उतना ही मीनिंगफुल प्रश्न उनसे भी बोलो भाई, पूछ लो उनसे. अगर प्रिंट करते क्या होता है इंडियन इकोनॉमी, आपने उस सजेशन दिया, उसका मतलब क्या है, ये प्रश्न भी पूछ लिया करें. Debt is a concern. We will bring it down. But why did we reach this level? 2020. And I sympathize with the states. When economy dipped -20, -23. They didn't have any money in their hand. We will have to ensure, not just the central government, but also the state, because the GST revenues had come down. Back-to-back borrowing was undertaken. Otherwise, where would they be? Again, last year when the budget expanded on the capital expenditure, we had to borrow. Market borrowings happened from the center. Are these necessary borrowings or not? If I were to say, no, bhaiya, my debt to GDP will go haywire, I won't borrow, let's all sit where we are, we can't build this country now, COVID has hit us badly, let the economy revive on its own, then I will come. Will it be possible? Yes, consciously debt was undertaken, borrowing was undertaken. But even now, it's much better position than many other countries.
Last ball by Siddharth.
One very quick point, ma'am. In 2019, you gave a September pre-Diwali surprise to corporate India by cutting tax rates. Can we expect that this September, at least for personal income tax rates?
I've done that already for personal income taxes, already
No,
moved
30
to
to
next.
25. I will keep at it. 30 to 25.
Let this bill get passed from the parliament. We'll think about it.
You know, most ministers are much happier taking questions from one anchor or editor because you kind of know the kind of bowling that's going to come your way. The finance minister liked the session that happened last time and said, you know, we can do something similar. So to have four completely different perspectives. So you've got questions coming at different altitudes, questions coming from different spectrums of economic philosophy. That takes, that takes a lot of, and given what's happening outside of the budget as well. So that takes a lot of
Questions
courage.
in Hindi.
Questions in Hindi also. No, so my last question is this. Everybody has his own take, Finance Minister, on how they think you've changed in the 5 years that you've been in the hottest seat running one of the most important ministries, if not the most important ministry in the Modi government. I want to know from you, how do you think you've changed in the 5 years as Finance Minister? What is it that worries you the most and what is it that gives you the greatest satisfaction?
And which was easier, Defense Minister or the Finance Minister?
I didn't say this earlier, but I'm saying it here. I think now I'm a lot more cooler in taking criticism. 2019 was very difficult. And I think that's thanks a lot to the media. You kept me on my toes. I'm not saying it in a tongue-in-cheek fashion. Social media was one other game. That's a different story. But I think media has also been appropriate, can I say, in the way in which you carried the criticism each year to a level which actually addressed the nitty-gritties of finance. It wasn't a blunt criticism which remained the same 1920, 20, 21, 22. No, I can see distinctly different approach to criticizing budgets, finance ministry's activities, and that gives me the feeling that there's sense and there's hope. People are not aankh band karke criticizing us, particularly the media. And actually today I'm telling you all, you've helped me to change my approach to dealing with media. I'm a lot more cooler now.
How nice. We love ministers who love criticism. That's just the best kind of space to be.
And that's truth.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the India Today and Business Today Budget Roundtable, can you join me in a very warm round of applause for the Finance Minister for having come here? You know, being populist as you build into an election is the easiest thing to do. To attempt to show financial conservatism despite all populist pressure takes a special kind of effort, and that's what you've shown. Thank you very much. We look forward to the day when income tax comes down from 30 to 25. You've kind of given an indication that you'll think about it. We hope you think about it very seriously and you listen to a lot of what at least our media says. Others I'm not so worried about, at least what the India Today group says, that issue. Thank you very much, madam, for joining us. Thank you. Absolute pleasure having you with us. Thank you for your time. Thank you, ma'am.